6 people died of a heroin overdose in the same part of the country. That the people, even the people who do not support legalization of marijuana, would say that's a misallocation of resources. So the country is almost fairly unanimous about focus on the bad stuff killing people like heroin and fentanyl, and leave the marijuana people alone so you can do a better job on the heroin. So that's why in the 18 months that the Trump administration has been there, as far as I know, there hasn't been one state legal store bothered by the DEA. That was in compliance with state law.
I know there's a couple. It had nothing to do with that. They were doing that looping thing. There was some stuff about that, and then there was another weird case where, actually, I know about it because a lawyer was in trouble. She was like advising illegal stuff, and they caught her. They seized the computers, whatever. But I know what you're saying. They were those are unique cases.
Right. So it's all good news. It's just a question now: how fast can, and for your audience, understand there's a grand total of. The good news is we're up to 6 full-time advocates and lobbyists on the Hill who are moving to push it to unscheduled and/or 10th Amendment for social justice, and now we're up to 6 industry lobbyists who are in there stroking every day to change the law so that they can have more marijuana stores around the country. We now have a small army of 12 lobbyists. In comparison to the last couple of years ago, we had like 3 or 4. However, like even just the drug companies have 600 lobbyists, plus they carry in buckets of money every day to buy off the Congress. So we still have an uphill fight, but now we have public opinion, we have the administration, we've got Cory Gardner's a very strong voice in Colorado, and politicians aren't stupid. I was in Marco Rubio's office about 2 months ago, and Rubio's always been horrible on marijuana. He fight it every which way. And his aide told me, well, because of the vote in Florida, which went 71% for medical, the senator's position has evolved, and he now supports 10th Amendment for marijuana. And he's just one of many examples that I can name where the senators are looking at the numbers of the polling, and they're going, okay, I cannot stand in front of 71% of the people who want this. And that's why the vote in Michigan, I've been telling my folks there, whatever you do, don't be satisfied with 58 or 59. Try to get up to 65 because it makes an absolute difference in the Congress. You get those numbers up there, congressmen will read those numbers and go, I cannot stand in front of 65 or 71%.
Absolutely. As you're mentioning the opioid crisis, which is a conversation I'm sure you're hearing a lot about in Washington, one of the concerns, and as you mentioned, especially amongst the police officers, as it relates to raiding or the Department of Justice or DA, and we know in Michigan, for example, that of the conditions that qualify somebody for a medical marijuana use, chronic pain is one of them, severe and chronic pain, or now it's chronic pain. Mm-hmm. As a majority of the persons who have cards, is there any discussion in the we talk about it, but like the idea of using in place of opiates cannabis for pain relief, or using it as a treatment for opioid addiction? Is that part of the conversation?
Well, there has been some testimony in the last 12 months from federal officials that have acknowledged the research that in the states of medical, you've got about a 25% reduction in opioid deaths. So obviously people are titrating, they're dosing themselves with God's green medicine as opposed to using the store-bought pills, and the result is fewer people are dying. The federal government has taken official notice of that, but to actually go from taking official notice to changing the law, the drug companies, boys and girls, the drug companies still pass out their millions of dollars per year. And as much as we now have an army of 12, we really don't have any money. And even if we did, we could never outbid the drug company. So that's why these votes, like the one in 2 weeks in Oklahoma, are just crucial. Oklahoma's looking good for going medical with maybe 58 to 60%. This is going to have an impact in my world here on Capitol Hill because the 5 congressmen from Oklahoma and the 2 senators hate marijuana. They've been fighting this thing tooth and nail. But when the people speak loudly, like 60% in Oklahoma, then they're going to have to look in the mirror and go, am I going to stand in front of 60% of the people who are supposed to vote for me? And that's why all these votes are important, and the final percentage is really important.
Yeah, I will say so. It's so. What's your final question? We'll let you go. What should we expect, if anything? You think this states' rights bill is going to be the next big discussion, or the next likelihood of some positive relief from the federal level?
It is. This one with it's called, all capital letters, STATES, State Act, okay, by Cory Gardner and Elizabeth Warren. That's going to be the main vehicle we're going to be pushing for the rest of the year. We've already had a chat about it, a strategy meeting, and right now what I'm doing and my colleagues is we are pushing the levers of power as much as we can. As I say, I have two professional friends in the White House. They're pushing for it to get the president to use his influence. As we just saw on Tuesday, you do not want to stand in front of Trump. If Trump says go left, you better go left, or he will hurt you. So if he will use that type of political muscle, my friends could all be out of a job by Christmas, and that's no lie. But it's going to depend if the White House simply tells Speaker Ryan to allow the vote. As I say, we have the votes in the House, and we're real close to having the votes in the Senate. But again, Trump would have to essentially say, McConnell, allow the vote on this 10th Amendment for marijuana and let it go through. And so that's what we're going to be pushing, and it is real possible. I just came back from a meeting this evening at a social hour with one of the most powerful men in Washington, and he's all in favor of our position, and he's talking to people and recommending it when he talks to congressmen and senators. So I am medium confident. The word hope is silly, but I am actually medium confident that by Christmas we may have a real big Christmas present.
So good to hear. I really appreciate your medium confidence. That's no, I'm kidding. That's it's good news, and I love your updates, and I'm glad to hear that it's still an important part of the conversation, and that there's good news as you're reporting. So we'll leave it at that, Howard. Thank you so much for calling in and giving us your time. It's always fascinating, and we appreciate your commentary and education for our community.
You're welcome, sir, and I thank you for what you're doing, because we got to get the voices out to as many people as possible and help them understand the importance of these state and local elections to influence the people in Washington to get rid of the entire stupid prohibition model. And I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Awesome. Likewise. Bye-bye.
That was a great segment.
That was a great segment, and that was, of course, Howard Woolridge, of one of the founders of LEAP, and
2 weeks off, and we come back big.
Come back big.
Right?
Coming back big. I wanted to say this. He reminded me of something, which I think is, we're going to go to break in a minute, but we can talk about this. But I got, I know that there's this National Attorney General's Association that there's probably a Republican one and a Democratic one.
Right.
And I learned that
the Republican one put out that video about Dana.
Well, that's the local one. There's a national group, which gets behind various candidates, may take interest in certain races, whatnot, and may contribute funds or whatever. And I'm not talking about that, but what I'm saying is that at some point they released the data and statistics nationally on various issues, and it said so people that we know, the people that were involved in the race from the Democratic side, the Democratic National Attorney General's Association, something like that, sent out, these are the issues that are interesting, this is the positions that are favorable, these are the ones that are going to win, whatever you may think. And I believe that was one of the things, as it was being described about Marco Rubio and seeing the light in Florida, that our favorite former opponent, who lost badly, when he saw his come to cannabis plant, bejesus, that may have been it. Not just the screaming and yelling about lying about prosecuting the Lansing 7, but actually getting literature from the national level that you better change your position if you want to win. Go with whatever you want. But what I also find fascinating is the national attorney generals of the Democratic Party, which is in favor of legalization. Yes. I find that fascinating.
I don't. I mean, what we're seeing in Michigan is really interesting in the respect that you have this progressive faction of the Democratic Party that its tenets are starting to finally take hold, and the folks that refuse to acknowledge and embrace a lot of those tenets are ending up losing in a big way, and they're losing credibility, which is what I think you're speaking of with former Attorney General Patrick Miles, in that he refused to embrace the fact that his viewpoints were unpopular, and instead of just owning it, he just kept making excuses, which it's just more and more difficult to put any credibility into anything he says.
So the DAGA, the Democratic Attorney Generals Association, is taking notice of Dana, and quite awesome.
Yes, we can talk about it, Jamie. You know the same information. She probably told you that she was sharing that. Let's just say what it is, that they believe that her race is the top one or two of interest at the national level.
Yeah.
Now, so they're interested in coming and providing support, and both on a financial level and whatnot, and but
dollar bill.
That's why she doesn't talk to us.
no, she.
Well, she's out. She's working hard. I've come across the campaign recently, and
it's changed
there's a new campaign manager, and they're taking some different approaches, and they still need to raise money. They need to raise a lot of money, but they are getting some help here and getting some good interest from people. It's a great race, and Dana's awesome. I
find it fascinating that because listen, let's be honest, and we've talked about it on the show before. Dana was like, she was unequivocal about this. She contacted us. She contacted people within the community. She wanted everybody to know what her position was up front. She was educated about it. She wanted everyone to know. And it wasn't real hard to question. Then, as she stood out there, and I used to laugh, she's the only one that's got a pot leaf on her, and everyone would tell her otherwise. You saw after a period of time, people were coming around. It was like a 6-month time frame. And she was like on day one, and 8 months later, people were calling. They want to come on the radio show. They saw the impact and
it was positive, not negative. So a lot of candidates at that point came forward. Every Democratic candidate at that point came forward and said, "I am for cannabis."
She embraced it in the beginning when everyone still thought it was going to be unpopular.
She also
and not only she embraced that, but her stance and position on a lot of other important issues is pretty awesome as well,
of course,
which makes her really easy to like and be able to go vote for.
It's not a one issue with her when you're supporting her.
And she's going to bring integrity back to the Attorney General's office. That's why she's reaching past the Democratic Party to support. Many libertarians, Republicans, independents are supporting her also. But she's just the best choice for that position.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
But I'm saying that like even going into this convention, there was I would say a mistake of the party's leadership on this particular issue.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they held back. Ultimately, Miles, if he's the other side of it, came around, but they were late to the game, and they were going to resist it as much as possible.
They threw the kitchen sink at her at the end. They tried everything.
True.
And what I noticed about the party's leadership when I was at the convention, they're all former law enforcement.
Of course.
Yeah.
And the biggest
Chiefs,
districts.
sheriffs, all of them at the top. And through the years, they are hardcore drug warriors, guaranteed. And that's why they have a hard time standing with this issue.
And I would say, though, if you look across the country, I imagine that it is not that different in a lot of these metropolitan city states where you have, major cities that have, urban population, whatever that means, and, the intellectuals or the city's civil servants and whatnot have come out of these leadership roles, whatever they may be, that have found themselves in Democratic politics, just like Warren Evans and Benny Napoleon or whoever and they've
Mark Hackle.
They've championed he was the other talk about that. Champion, come from the sheriff's position. And
it's the same way with the governor. It's the exact same way.
It's
the
about
Attorney General has always.
It's fascinating because it's for the national organization to take that role. I would say is a break from, the traditional. What is it called? The main branch of the Democratic Party. Like, they haven't been that way.
No, things are
like let's say that Hillary. Let's say that Hillary was the